How many times have you checked the weather on your phone only to find out it's wrong? I mean, this thing is expensive and high tech. So what in the world is going on with this thing? I get this question all the time. Today, smartphones come preloaded with weather apps. I think we all know that. They're already installed, and so very often they seem to be totally disconnected with what's actually happening outside. We've got so much technology, and yet these forecast apps are so consistently off target. Well, there are a lot of reasons why this occurs, and that's what we're going to break down on today's episode of the Current Temp. My name is Joey Solopek, and thank you for joining me today. First of all, let me thank my good friends, Lexus of Memphis, for being our partner with this broadcast. They are a fantastic group. They do amazing work, just high-quality people and an amazing product. If you need a car, please go check them out. All right, it is time to dive into a very popular question. Why are weather apps often so wrong? They have so many problems. Well, this is going to be an interesting conversation. I've talked about this for many years as I've seen the evolution of the smartphone, of the weather app begin its journey. And I've been a part of a weather app myself for many years, and so I kind of understand the inner workings of that. So let's start out with our first problem when it comes to the built-in weather apps on your phone or even some apps that you may pay for. And I'm going to call this one the chaotic nature of the atmosphere. First of all, you got to understand our atmosphere is a very, very fluid system. A tiny change in one part of the world can have a massive impact days or maybe even weeks later. This makes long-range forecasting really inherently difficult because so much changes all the time, even in real time. Even with massive amounts of computer power, and that's getting more and more impressive every year, and we're talking about quantum computers not too far down the road, it does help with forecasting, but the sheer number of variables that we have makes it really impossible to perfectly model the atmosphere. Now let that sink in for just a moment. It is really impossible so far to perfectly model every layer, every wind stream, every bit of precip and moisture and humidity and heat. To put all those things together is just not possible yet. We get really good and really close, or meteorologists do, but we're going to call this number one issue, the constantly changing dynamics. All right, the other issue we have, I'm going to call this one number two, are the limits of the very models themselves. So you've heard of some popular weather models, probably the GFS, that's the American-based model, the Euro, that's the European-based model. These divide the atmosphere into grid boxes. So you're talking once again about software, algorithms, and computing power. These two I just talked about are based on different continents, but they cover the U.S. and the world. But they also cover miles of space in these grid boxes. You got to keep in mind, though, that even in those grid boxes and those miles of space, there are significant gaps in the coverage, particularly over remote areas or very low populated areas. I mean, it's still a big deal to get accurate readings from recognized authoritative measurement spots. You can't just take everybody's thermometer in the backyard because then your numbers would be all over the place. So you've got to have a system that is certified and sort of universal, and that's not as widespread as people think. Incomplete information can lead to model uncertainties, and on top of all that, your different weather apps that you pick up and use all the time and you open up and look at, well, those are going to use data, depending on which weather app, from different models. So you could look at two different apps that are pulling from two different data streams. You probably wouldn't have any idea. And each of those models has its own unique algorithm, its own unique biases, which can lead once again to conflicting forecasts for the same location. So we're going to say that the computer models themselves are good but not perfect. So there's issue number two. Now let's go to issue number three. I'm going to call this one the robot forecast because it's a big part of the problem. Most of your weather apps, okay, and again, this is someone who helped try to put information into a weather app for many years, working for a TV station, but the basis of it, the nuts and bolts of every weather app, runs on a computer output or software from somewhere. Especially with ones that cover large distances, they're all going to be automatically generated picking from one of these data sets. So you can kind of see how I'm starting to set up this problem. When you've got an automated forecast, they don't get the benefit of a human forecaster and all the things that come along with that. It's just not possible to put a human in the position to fine-tune all of those forecasts. So you're preloading a format, you're plugging in generalized data, you're then going to send that out to millions of phones in millions of locations all across the country in different climate zones, and you've got different latitudes and different temperatures. I mean, it just gets extremely complicated, and there's going to be a lot of what I'm going to call generalization involved. You need to remember that word, generalization, because that's what happens a lot of times with our phone forecasts. When we look at those numbers and they don't match up, we're getting generalized data that doesn't really have a great handle on what may be happening where you live. We're going to call this issue mass data when it should be specific data, which of course leads to the lack of a human involvement. Having an actual person, a man or a woman in there, reading the data, looking at the specifics of it, and using their own experience with a localized area. There's just not enough time and manpower for a preloaded phone app or a weather app that you buy. You don't have enough manpower or money to have humans involved in every single one of those forecasts. I mean, let's just take this Memphis area and the surrounding 3 states, Tennessee, Arkansas, and Mississippi. That's probably, I don't know, we're talking just around the Memphis area, we're talking 30, 40 counties close to Memphis. Now, take that across the entire country, and within the counties, you got different zip codes. How are you going to fine-tune that? It's just, as of now, it's not really possible. You're talking about algorithms that don't know how to factor in local knowledge, maybe a historical anomaly, more on that in a moment, specific geographical influence, like are you live near a bay? Does that have an impact? Do you live near the Great Lakes? Do you live near a mountain range? Or maybe a tendency that a numeric model can't capture. I can't tell you how many times I've had someone talk to me about things that they think influence Memphis weather, like Crowley's Ridge in Arkansas, or the Bluff downtown, or the pyramid itself, or the Mississippi River. I mean, the list goes on and on. But if you have a local professional who's done it for a number of years and seen the highs and lows, who can give you data and input it, that's going to make things better. Now, let's just take for example, when I helped with a weather app, I had an entire job to do with a TV forecast. There was no way for me to constantly update that all day. So there would be times, big gaps of hours, when you weren't able to see the very latest forecast from a human. You were going to have to rely on automated data. All right, now that leads me to number 5, timing and updates. Your apps, at best, update every few hours, or you might get an hourly reading from a recognized airport reading about temperature or some of the basics. Now, and we're just talking about the basic nuts and bolts ingredients, temperature, maybe the wind speed at that moment at the airport. But what you also get is a lot of data massaging. Interpolation is what it's called. And software with weather teams and weather programs have been doing this for years, where they will take these specific data points, let's say one at the Memphis International Airport, one at the Jackson, Tennessee Airport, one over in Little Rock. Okay, those are really widespread. And then it will interpolate what's happening between Little Rock and Memphis and give you a bunch of numbers. Many people think those are accurate, specific, verified numbers. They're not. It's an interpolation of data over large pieces of ground that the software is saying, okay, if it's 78 in Little Rock and it's 71 in Memphis, then it's probably going to be 74 in the middle. That's not always the case, but that's how those kind of systems work. So you don't have great timing and updates as much as people think. Okay, it's really done in a wider, spread out sort of format, and a forecast can change dramatically. If you put, let's say, a forecast in at 6 o'clock in the morning, by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you could have completely different situation. All right, this next one I call slice and dice. This is number 6, and this one's interesting. Most of your weather apps in the U.S. get raw data from the same source, and that's the National Weather Service. We've all heard of the National Weather Service. That's the government-funded entity, and they're the bellwether generally when it comes to data. Now, we have corporations getting involved as well, but when your raw data comes out, most people get that from the National Weather Service. Inaccuracies can arise from how each of those apps that's drawing that data, how they slice it up and present it. Remember, I said we've got different models. There's one thing that can cause inconsistencies. Now you've got apps all over the planet pulling in this National Weather Service data, But how are they going to slice it up and present it to you? I mean, that's a big deal. If you could take the exact same data package, and depending on how the app itself is written by whatever teenager, it's going to look different when it gets to you. Here's an example. One app may look at all the data, all the numbers, and show you a partly cloudy icon, which most of us now are just dealing with icons and fast-moving images, and okay, what does this mean? The exact same data on a different app may show a chance for rain. They may have a little raindrop on that icon based on how they wrote the software and how it's interpreted. Same exact data, but it was sliced and diced differently. Both using the exact same forecast information, but they can have so many different ways that they present it to you and put it into icons and percentages depending on how the app itself divides it up. All right, number 7, what about the geographical issues? We've got different pieces of land. We've got different mountain ranges, small hills, big hills, rivers. All those things play into a part and play a role, but automated forecasts don't always take those into consideration. You've got bodies of water. You've got something called the urban heat island, which I think Memphis has a big issue with every year. This can cause big variables in your forecast. And if you're getting an automated forecast, let's say out of Atlanta, we've got a lot of corporations out of Atlanta that put out national forecasts. So you've got a room of computers in Atlanta that are putting out forecasts for somebody in Spokane, Washington, on the other very edge of the country, or up in New England. This same little batch of software in Atlanta is pushing that out. Now, depending on where the company is, but you get my drift. You've got a small group trying to do all this for all across the nation. And I can tell you, having been a previous chief meteorologist, one of the things I enjoyed talking to other meteorologists about when I would go to conferences from all over the country is how much different their forecasts were depending on their terrain. I had friends in Utah, friends in Denver, friends on the West Coast, or friends in the Northeast that all had different things they had to deal with, and they became experts in that area. An app's not going to do that for you. We don't have that ability yet. You're still talking about a loss of not having a human involvement. Maybe you can see where I'm going with this. All right, here's one I love talking about. It's called the long-range forecast weaknesses. Now, what am I talking about? It is a great marketing scheme to give you a 10-day forecast. I get that because we all want to know what's happening. In fact, I've got access to several different software packages and data places I pay for. One of them gives me a 90-day forecast. It is not accurate. It's a 90-day forecast based on widespread generic data trying to give me a theme or a trend, but there's no way with any specificity that could be accurate. I'm going back to point 1 because of the fluidity of the atmosphere. So I've told people this for years. Your best chance at an accurate forecast is going to be something between 3 and 5 days. 3 and 5 days out is, as of now, with the computing power that we have, and I'm sure that will get better sometime in the future. 3 to 5 days, you're looking at pretty good numbers. Once you go to 5 to 7 days, it's just more general guidance because that 7-day forecast is going to change. And if you go past 7, really now you're just all over the place. And in fact, if you were to track that and see how accurate it was, you're going to see that that's not very consistent. And here's maybe one of the biggest ones. And this is one that I'm going to give a little bit of time to. It's called our expectations. Friends, we have become more and more demanding as a society. I'm sure you know that. You've seen that if you're online at all. Even before we were online, people would call, write the TV station if anything upset them and their recliner and their program. It didn't matter what else was happening everywhere. We've become very demanding and sort of self-focused. And along with that, we pay a lot less attention. Now, here's what I mean. We're getting our information from all these different sources all day long. Look at it. Lift your head up by a bus stop or in a waiting room, or even if you're with your family at home. You could have 5 people in the same room, and they're all doing this, right? Looking at their phone, scrolling, looking at different information. I mean, from swipe to swipe to swipe to swipe. What that does is it means we begin confusing where we're getting our data. Try to recall exactly where you read something. And sometimes it's hard because you're getting input from so many places. I can't tell you how many times, this is pre-smartphone, someone would call me at the TV station and dress me down and give me a blessing out, furious that I'd interrupted their program. And it wasn't me. It was a guy on another station or a gal. They had no idea who it was. They just wanted to call and vent. They weren't paying attention. Well, think about how much more fractured our attention is now, and you just compound the problem. So let me go back to my original point, our expectations. We expect things exactly right for exactly where we are anytime we want it, and that's just not realistic, and it's really not going to happen. You would think that with today's technology that would improve, and I think that it is, but it's not possible with weather forecasting for every place that our feet is going to be, and that's or are going to be. That's a big issue. When you're doing a forecast, everybody wants to know what's it going to be for me, no matter where I drive my car, all over this region, any time of the day. It better be exactly what I read or saw on your website or that you told me on air, and that's not really realistic. And so I don't know if we change this one. I'm trying to help educate all of us so you'll be able to temper your expectations, but that's one of the things we're really battling when we pick this phone up and say, why in the world is this weather app no good? Well, I'm expecting it to be perfect, and I'm telling you right now, it's not going to be because it's automated. Even when you get humans involved, there will still be mistakes, but I will tell you that humans do a lot better job of interpreting that data right now than these generalized apps. So, what in the world is the solution? I don't like to talk about problems without giving you a solution, and I think I've got some things to think about. I think one of it is going to be a blend of answers, and one of those is we have to start thinking about weather in a different way, and that's going to be hard to do. Many of us think about weather or where we get our news or how we do things because of how we were raised, maybe how our parents did it before us or our grandparents. We think about things a certain way, but haven't things changed so quickly? We're no longer getting news from the newspaper, and a lot of us aren't even doing TV news at night anymore. We're going online. We're looking at podcasts. We're looking at YouTube. We're looking at apps. We're going to have to adjust what we think about the information we get, and what we really need, what I'm going to call general guidelines, okay? Over my years of being in that industry, in the TV industry and the weather industry, generally speaking, what you really need to know are temperatures and rain probabilities, right? I mean, you want to plan things like your cookout or the kids at the bus stop, or you've got a wedding coming up, those kind of things. Just remember that there is a huge chance that there will be small discrepancies, no matter what you see or where you're going. And so we're really dealing with rain chances. I had a gentleman I'm friends with. He's got a restaurant in North Mississippi. He's been trying to have Thursday night live concerts for 3 or 4 weeks. And he called me and said, the first 3 weeks it kept saying rain chance. And so I canceled it and it didn't rain. Rain chance, I canceled it, didn't rain. And he said, what do you think about tonight? I said, well, you've got a 30% chance of rain for where you are. But I personally think you're going to be fine in the city you're doing this. I say go for it. I said, it's my experience. I'm looking at the radar. I've got a sense of what's happening, and he ended up having a great night. I think it worked out for him. A little bit of human interaction helped focus that, and that's the thing. We need to focus in on the details that we really need. Don't just kind of haphazardly look at your app and go, it's wrong all the time. Focus on what your particular need is and what you want to get out of it. I got to dress for work tomorrow. I really need to know, is it going to rain or what are the temperatures? All right, so what can we do? We talked about rain chances, what those temperatures are going to be. Let's focus in and narrow our search, and this is going to help you get to where I think you want to go. Some things you can do. This is the part of this where you can write this down. There's some things you can check out. I'm going to give you some of my favorite apps as well and tell you what I would do. First of all, there are free sites available to you that I like, okay? First of all, you've got weather.gov. That's the National Weather Service. They've got local offices spread all across the nation, and they're constantly updating in real time what's going on. And I'm going to help you dig into that as well. They don't have the ability to micro forecast, and everybody wants that all the time. I had somebody contact me yesterday that wanted to know the exact rain amount for where she lived. It's not possible unless you have a rain gauge yourself. I don't have a rain gauge there. I can't tell you exactly how much rain fell at your house. I could tell you how much rain fell at the airport nearest you. So again, you got to keep in mind, we've got to decide what's important to us. But your local places like weather.gov really do a good job of keeping local people up to date. A side note, if you go to one of their sites and click around, you don't have to deal with any ads, annoying ads or pop-ups. I love that. Additionally, follow them on social media, because if you're looking for real-time weather updates all the time, you want to swipe, and read, go to their X page, their Facebook page, and I can tell you they are constantly stream of data and information when a big weather event is playing out. And I think that's important because that's really when you want to know what's happening, especially if it's happening where you live. Go to these free sites, weather.gov for generalized information, or find them on X or Facebook. They're there. And you can even ask personalized questions. They're really busy. I don't know if they'll be able to answer it, but that's something I would check into. Here's another one I like, okay? track this stuff yourself. And here's what I mean. I know that sounds like I'm giving you a big task, but you can look at radar yourself on some good apps, free apps and paid apps, and figure out, okay, I see rain in Arkansas right now. I wonder if my kid's going to have soccer practice. Looks like it's headed our way. You can do that anytime you want to and track it all the way until it gets right up to where you're sitting. You can do that for free or go to some of these apps that I like. Let me give you a couple I like. The first one I'm going to mention is Radar Scope. That's my personal favorite. It costs like $10, I think. But I can tell you that meteorologists across the country, both the National Weather Service, TV meteorologists, everybody uses this thing. Their radar is amazing. It's got some great warning systems. You have to pay for some things in there. For me, it's worth it. It's fantastic. You can use it anywhere in the country that you travel to, by the way. That's something I love about it. Here's one that's free that I like. It's called My Radar. I mean, you can do some upgrades, but you can get some things in there that show you where radar is tracking. So you've got Radar Scope, My Radar. You've also got Ventasky. This is one I've come across just recently. I really like. In fact, I do a lot of talking to school groups. Kids love this app. You've got a lot of interactivity. You can see wind barbs and wind streams. It's got a lot of free stuff as well. I'll throw in another one that I don't have on here, and that's the Weather Underground. Weather Underground. These are all apps you can get on Android or the Apple Store and check those out. I'm wrapping this up, but let me end with this. There are a variety of people, social media, online, that really ramp up during storms and severe weather. And that's when people really start reaching out, especially what I've seen, and they want data. What's happening during this moment? That's available to you now all the time, no matter where you are. You can go on to YouTube. I know there are people that specialize on Twitter. There are people that specialize on Facebook. I try to do that myself when possible to get on there and give updates. It's really amazing what technology has given us that we did not have in television, that I'm able to interact, and anybody can. So I encourage you to look on social media to sort of broaden your horizon of where you get that data. You don't have to just go to an app. You can go to a real-time weather stream from somebody local, and they are popping up even more and more often. In fact, I've worked with storm chasers over the years. They love showing free live streams connected to somebody who's broadcasting of what's actually happening and occurring, and that can be invaluable. So there's another point for you. Now, let's say you want to dig a little deeper. And I run into this all the time. Real weather nerds, weather fans, just like me, who want to get in there and go, okay, I want to look at barometric pressure. I want to talk about wet bulb points. I want to get in there and look at layers and really mess around. You've got some options here. Weather Bell is a great resource. It does cost money. I think you can get a casual user subscription, but if you're looking to learn and to forecast, this one is if you want to be a little bit more serious. Okay, you got Weather Bell. Pivotal Weather, that's another one. Go to pivotalweather.com. I believe they've got some free stuff. I see a lot of meteorologists using this, a lot of colorful maps and graphics I think you'll really like. And here's one I kind of like. It's called Tropical Tidbits. If you like to look into hurricanes and a lot of ocean type of action, Tropical Tidbits is a good one, and it's free, and there's a lot of those out there that you can get into. All right, so let's recap. All right, I know I've taken you through a lot of weather issues today. First of all, you got to realize that your weather apps are going to have ups and downs. Those preloaded ones, right, they're not going to always be great. Go ahead and accept that and know that that's going to be part of the deal. Check other sources, right? Check several apps against each other, or go online and look to somebody that you know or that you think can get some feedback from, the local National Weather Service, the live stream feed they'll do on either Facebook or X. You can ask questions, but check around, because you're going to start to winnow down who's giving you good data and who's not. And look at radar maps yourself. You can do real-time and short-time forecasting with some of these free radar apps, and they're all over the place. And a lot of them will now have a button that shows you where we expect to go in the future. Now, keep in mind, that's going to use different data models, so you kind of got to know a little bit about what you're looking at to get a good sense. But have fun and play around with that. And with just a little practice, if you're at soccer practice, if you're at a football game and you don't want to get rained on, you can get pretty good at figuring out what's going to happen. You don't have to call me all the time. I do get a lot of that. And focus on shorter forecasts. I told you the accuracy of a forecast decreases with time. 3 to 5 days is going to be much more accurate than a 7-day, which is going to be much more accurate than a 10-day. So think about that. And finally, focus on checking in with a human. Consult a human meteorologist, because at the end of the day, if you really need a question answered, they're going to put the things together, especially if they're localized, to give you a feel for what should happen. There are some national touchstones, some national people in weather who can answer broader weather questions for you. with social media now, everybody is more accessible than ever before. And I got to tell you, I think that's a pretty cool thing. All right, as we wrap up, let me say this. At the end of the day, a weather app is really just a helpful tool, but it's often limited by their sort of one-fits-all approach, one-size-fits-all approach. They can't tell you why the radar looks the way it does or give you details on what set it up, and quite often can't tell you where it's going or really what's brewing beyond the numbers. That's where a real human forecaster comes in. But the good news, as I just mentioned, those humans are more accessible now than they ever have been, whether it's through a podcast like this, social media, direct community engagement. I see a lot of you folks out and about. I love when you come and ask questions. You have the chance to connect with someone who not only reads the models, but understands what's going on and the variances and the little variables of maybe where you live. So don't just rely on an app. Try to tap into people behind the forecast. Again, as always, I want to say a big thank you to my friends at Lexus. And if you have a question, once again, email us right here at the Current Temp. You can do that at thecurrenttemp@gmail.com. You can suggest a topic, or maybe you've got someone who's interesting who you think ought to be interviewed. We're open to those ideas as well, and we would love to hear from you. All right, you, my friends, are now weather-wise.